Okay, so in this video, we're going to take a look at creating menus, so primarily going to be menu systems, and then also look a little bit at the FileChooser class. So just like what I did with sliders and text areas, the reason that I'm going to be including both menus and the FileChooser class in the single video is because at the very end, I want to go ahead and show you a simple program that's going to incorporate both of these concepts. So to start off with menus, so a menu could contain items like say menu items, checked menu items, radio button menu items, or even submenus. So in the sense of a submenu, that's whenever you see the little single menu item and you move your mouse over it and it opens up another menu. That's where it gets into that idea of submenus. So in this case, what we're going to focus primarily on, we're going to take a look at creating a menu system. We're going to have a couple of different menus, so things like a file and an edit menu. We'll then go ahead and add a few menu items to each of those, and then eventually I'll come back and kind of add some behavior to a couple of those just to see a little bit about what it's like to create a fully functioning menu system. So a menu system is going to be a collection of commands organized in one or more of these drop-down menus. Menu system is constructed with the following classes. So the primary ones that we're going to be making use out of are going to be menu bar, menu, and menu item. But in addition to those, there's also check menu item and radio menu item. So in order to create a menu system, the following steps are taken. So first, we're going to create our menu bar object that serves as the root of the menu system. We'll then go ahead and create the necessary menu objects and add them to our menu bar object. We'll then create our menu item objects and add those to their menu objects, so add them to their respective menu. We'll then go ahead and register an event handler for each menu item, so the individual items that are in our menus, those are the things we're going to give behaviors to. And then finally, we'll take that menu bar, complete with all of its menus and its menu items, and we'll add that to the scene graph. So essentially, you're going to be adding that to that scene object when we construct it. So the other thing I'll go ahead and note about menus is the concept of keyboard shortcuts. So typically, if you're pretty familiar with a particular application, you probably know that there are certain keyboard shortcuts like say control and then some letter key, or maybe command and then some letter key depending on your operating system, that will cause the application to execute the same sort of behavior as if you had clicked a particular item somewhere in your menus. So this idea, this is what's going to be known as a mnemonic. So it's going to be a key pressed in combination with, in this case, talking about with the Alt key. In a moment, I'll show you another one that does it with either Control or Command. These are also known as shortcut keys, access keys, or hotkeys. So whenever you're constructing your either your menu or your menu item, if you use an underscore character somewhere in the name that you give it, so you see in that string for the file menu, it's got underscore and then file. For the exit item, you see E underscore and then the rest of exit. So that underscore is going to precede the mnemonic that's going to be used for that menu item. So if we have it just come just before the F in file, that means that Alt plus the F key, that would be the mnemonic for opening the file menu. In the case of the exit item, since the underscore comes just before the letter X, if you do Alt plus X, then that will execute the same behavior as if you had clicked that exit item. So most likely what that would do is be a shortcut for closing the application. But I don't really recommend using this. I generally find it to be somewhat unreliable, and I would recommend that instead of using mnemonics, so this whole approach here, instead what we'll go ahead and use is accelerators. And with accelerators, the code that you're going to have to put together for it is a little bit more complex, but the end result is that it's more, both more robust and more versatile. So in the example that I have here, we're going to use an accelerator on the menu item control called open. So essentially we're going to be creating a shortcut or a hotkey for the open item. The key code combination specifies the combination of keys to press to access this item. So you can see that in the second line of this example. You'll see new key code combination, and then I've got my pair of parentheses, and inside of there I start putting in things like a key code and a key combination. So the key code, that's just going to specify a particular letter. The key combination, I use a constant called shortcut down. That shortcut down just means control for Windows or command for Mac. And then from there, we also are going to specify what it is that we want this accelerator to do. So that's where this runnable comes in. So the runnable interface is going to be implemented with a single line of code. The fire method simply tells the application to perform event firing with the open menu item. So essentially, this is the equivalent of clicking the control, or in this case, clicking that menu item. So we'll go ahead and minimize this. Come over here to NetBeans. So we're going to go ahead and create a new project. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and make this my file menu demo. So this will be a new JavaFX application. Click Next. And so right here, call this the file menu demo. Click Finish. And so inside of here, we'll go ahead and remove the extra comments that we're not going to need. Make some adjustments to the style of the application. And we'll go ahead and move the main method to the top. And we'll go ahead and start from here. So the first thing I need to go ahead and do is bring in each one of those different classes that I'm going to be using to construct my menu system. So that's going to include the menu bar, the menu, and the menu item classes. But first, one of the things I'll go ahead and do is just get rid of some of the extra imports that I'm not going to be using in this application. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these, and that should be it. So we'll go ahead and add our extra couple of imports right here. So we'll say import JavaFX.scene.control.menubar. So again, each one of these is going to be a type of control. So everything comes from that scene.control package. So get our menu bar, menu, and menu item. Import JavaFX.scene.control.menu. And import JavaFX.scene.control.menu item. And save that. And so then right here, we'll go ahead and start putting this together. So the order that we were going to go in, we were going to make the menu bar first. We'll then make our menus that we can add to our menu bar. And then we'll make the menu items that we can add to our menus. So for this particular example, I'll focus primarily on just a single menu that we'll add to our menu bar. So we're focusing on just the file menu. So the first thing I need is the menu bar. I'm going to go ahead and just call this menu bar in all lowercase. This will be equal to a new menu bar. And then after that, we'll go ahead and put together our file menu that we're going to end up putting into this this menu bar. So to menu, I'm going to call this file menu. Again, we'll just go ahead and do that name in all lowercase. This is going to be equal to a new menu that we call file. We can then go ahead and add this to our menu bar. So we're going to do menu bar.get menus. So we're going to use this get menus method in order to access the list of menus that are currently in this menu bar. When we first do this, initially it's going to be empty. So we're going to go ahead and add this file menu to it. So we're going to use that add method, put in file menu right here. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and put together the menu items that we're going to put into our file menu. So we're going to create a couple of different menu item objects. So we'll call one of these open item. I'll do that name in all lowercase. This will be equal to a new menu item. And we'll go ahead and give it a name. So that name is essentially going to be the label that we see whenever we click over it. So like if you look in this file that we have right here, you open this up, you can see that they have different names right here. So this name that we specify is what we're going to see there for that menu item. Then go ahead and make another menu item. So this is going to be the save item. So equal to a new menu item. We'll go ahead and put the text save for its label. And then finally, we'll do menu item of the exit item. This will be equal to a new menu item. And we'll go ahead and put exit for this one. So the next thing I want to be able to do is set up the behavior for this, where we would do something like set on action to specify some kind of event handler for each one of these. But based on what it is that I need these to do, I'm going to go ahead and skip the open and save right now. I'll come back to those in just a moment. We'll go ahead and do the exit one for right now. So we're going to grab our exit item, dot set on action. We're going to have our event, and we'll go ahead and include that pair of curly braces to open up the body for this event. And so right here, what we're going to go ahead and put is a method that allows us to close the application. So the application itself is based on this primary stage that we're using. So the stage itself is the entire application window. Keep in mind that the scene is just all of the content in the application window. So what I want to do is provide a method here that I'm calling on primary stage in order to close the application itself. So I'm going to use my primary stage dot close. So this close method basically achieves the same behavior as if I were to click that little X button in the either upper left or upper right corner of the window. In addition to setting up the menu items and the behaviors, we also need to make sure that these menu items are put into our file menu. So we'll go ahead and do that right here. So we're going to say that our file menu dot get items. So just like we used get menus to get that list of menus in our menu bar, we're using get items to get the list of menu items in our menu. And then we're going to do add all. So since we have more than one thing, we'll use the add all method. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and put in our open item, save item, and exit item. So we'll have that list of items there. Keep in mind that the order of this list determines the order that they will appear in the menu. So the open item will be at the very top of the list, the save item will be underneath it, and then the exit item will be underneath that. So once we've got everything for our menu system set up, so we've got our menu bar, our menus that we want to put into that menu bar, our menu items that we want to put into our menus, maybe also some behaviors that we want to associate with those menu items. We want to go ahead and add this to the scene. So we're going to grab our scene, be equal to a new scene object. And right here, we're going to go ahead and put in the menu bar. So this menu bar is going to serve as essentially the root node of this application, since this is the only thing that I'm going to be constructing. We're not going to worry too much about adding any additional content. So I'll use that right here. Then we'll also go ahead and specify some dimensions. So if I had just a menu bar, the application would only be large enough for that one menu that I have there, so just that label for it, which would be very small. So I'm going to go ahead and provide my own dimensions for this. And we'll go ahead and make it 500 for the width and 300 for the height. We'll then go ahead and do primary stage. We'll set the scene based on that scene object that we just created. We'll then go ahead and give this a title. So we'll do primary stage dot set title. Go ahead and set this to our file menu demo. And then finally, we'll go ahead and make sure that it's actually displaying. So primary stage dot show. We'll go ahead and save that. And so now if we go ahead and run this application, we'll be able to see our file menu. It's been added to the top of the application. So we see it right here. So when you hover over it, it'll kind of highlight it to let you know that it's selectable. So if you click it, it'll open up a little menu for you. So right now the open and the save button don't actually do anything, but if we go ahead and test the behavior of the X button, the expected behavior is that it does the same thing as if I were clicking this X on the application window. So if you click this, it will close the application. Okay. So now that we've seen that, I want to go ahead and add some behavior for my open and save button, the menu items for it. So in order to do that, we'll need to introduce the FileChooser class. So a FileChooser is going to provide some dialog box for either opening or saving a file. The FileChooser will either display an open dialog box or a save dialog box. So this example that I've included right here is to show the open dialog box. If you recall dialog boxes from the JavaFX package, one of the earlier examples that you probably saw from Fundamentals 1, it's got a very similar appearance to that, where you used something like show input dialog and show message dialog. In this particular case, what we're dealing with is open and save dialog boxes. So the key difference here is that now it's going to open up a file browser window, and depending on which behavior you've chosen, if you've chosen open dialog, then what it's going to be doing is when you select a particular file somewhere in that browser, it's going to try to open that file, whereas if you're using a save dialog, what it's going to try to do is assume that you have some content that you're trying to save, and you're going to specify a location where you want to save it. So we can see right here in this example for the code, we are creating a FileChooser object. We're going to also go ahead and create a file object, so picking a particular file that you want to either open or maybe try to save in some way. We will then use our FileChooser object, and we're going to call the showOpenDialog method on that FileChooser object. And we also need to specify the application that this dialog is essentially going to be opened on top of. So in this case, we're just working with our primary stage, just dealing with that one application window. So this open dialog box essentially opens on top of our application window. I've also included a little bit of code if you want to try to add some behavior to this, where essentially if we try to open something, in this case this code is primarily saying if the user didn't actually make a selection, maybe they click cancel, they didn't really want to open a file, technically the selected file is going to be set to null when it finishes. So we're going to go ahead and do a check there to see if that's the case. If it's not equal to null, then we'll go ahead and actually get the file path. So in this case, I'm including some additional methods. Primarily, this is going to be stuff that's based on file IO. So in this case, we're using the getPath method to get the file path to the file that we just selected. And then we can also go ahead and include a little output label with this this text saying you selected, and then the file name where it's specifying the full file path to it. So we'll go ahead and minimize this, and what I'm going to focus on in this application is primarily just enough to be able to display the open and save dialog boxes. So for each of open item and save item, I need to go ahead and add an event handler to these. So we're going to go ahead and do our open item dot set on action. We'll do our event, our little arrow, and then include our curly braces for the body of our Lambda expression. And for this one, I need to go ahead and add the FileChooser object right here, so I can then go ahead and open up either the open dialog or the save dialog. And so we need to go ahead and do our import and go ahead and create that object. So right up here, maybe after I did all of my menu system imports, we'll go ahead and do an import for JavaFX.scene.control, or in this case it's a stage, so the FileChooser is going to be part of the stage, and then FileChooser, so right there. So again, because of the fact that the FileChooser is dependent on opening up these dialog boxes on top of the stage, the package where it's placed is going to be a little bit different from all of the controls that we've seen so far. And so then we created a menu bar here. I'm going to go ahead and just put the file chooser at the very top before we start getting into all that. So I'm going to go ahead and use my file chooser class. I'll create an object. I'll call it file chooser in all lowercase. This will be equal to a new file chooser. And again, we need to specify that it will be opened on top of our primary stage. Oh, wrong location for this. So we're going to do that when we specify the dialog boxes. So for the constructor, we're going to go ahead and keep this empty. Right down here, this is where we're going to specify that it's on the primary stage. So we're going to use our file chooser, and we're going to do open, or show open dialog. And then right here is where we're going to specify that it's being opened on top of the primary stage. We'll then do another one for our save item. So put save item.set set on action. We're going to have our event, our arrow. We'll include that pair of curly braces for the body of our lambda expression. And for this one, we're going to be doing file chooser dot show save dialog. Again, it's going to be on top of the primary stage. We'll go ahead and save that. And so now, if we go ahead and run this application, so we still got our file, still have all of our different menu items. The exit will still behave the same way as before. Before I go ahead and do that, let's go ahead and test out open and save. So if I click on open, what this is going to do is open up a file browser. So in this particular case, it will allow me to open a particular file somewhere in here. It's going to show it right here, this open button. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel. And if we test out save as well, then again we see basically the same file browser window, so that same dialog that we're getting. The one difference is that now it's going to be using a save button here instead of an open button. Go ahead and cancel that. And then finally, if we use the exit button, this will go ahead and close the application. So at this point, this is going to wrap up everything that I want to say about setting up a menu system and using the file chooser class. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of things that I excluded from this, like adding some additional behavior when you actually try to open a file or save a file. I've also left out the usage of the accelerator. So the last video that I want to go ahead and put together for this is going to be essentially a conclusion to both the Chapter 12 and the Chapter 13 content, so all of this content related to JavaFX, where essentially I'm going to discuss a much more elaborate and much more complex program that kind of utilizes a lot of the different concepts, so a lot of the different classes and controls that we've seen, all in just that single application.